The Queen's Gambit. Let's kick things off with a classic. You might have heard the name because, yes, there's a hit show named after it. The Queen's Gambit starts with white pushing the d-pawn to d4, black responds with d5, and then white tosses in the c-pawn. It's like saying, hey, take my pawn. But here's the twist. If black accepts it, white can easily get the pawn back, so it's less of a gamble and more of a fake gamble. Why do people love it? It gives white a little edge, a bit more control, while keeping things safe and solid. It's a go-to move for beginners and grandmasters alike, like a pizza topping everyone can agree on. The Danish Gambit. This one's a crowd pleaser, especially for beginners. White goes all in by tossing out the d-pawn, and sometimes even sacrifices a second pawn. Why the pawn buffet? So white can dominate the center and get their pieces out fast. White's down a couple of pawns, but here's the trick. If black isn't prepared, white can whip up some sneaky, quick checkmates. But beware, at higher levels, players know how to handle it, so the Danish can lose its edge. The Scandinavian Defense. When white opens with the e-pawn, black answers with d5, which often leads to the queen hopping out a bit too early. This move can throw white off, as the queen adds some pressure, but also becomes a target for white to chase around. It's not the fanciest move in the book, but it's solid and practical, like a reliable old truck that gets the job done. The Blackmer Gambit. The Blackmer is all about making a bold move right out of the gate. White throws out the e-pawn early, basically saying, here, take it. Why? Because it opens up central control and helps white bring out their pieces fast. While it doesn't make the cut for top-level games, it's still a blast for anyone looking for quick, aggressive attacks. The King's Gambit. Now, if you're in the mood for something spicier, meet the King's Gambit. It kicks off with the e-pawn marching up to e4 and then f4, white saying, I'm willing to risk a pawn to mess with you. This move can lead to big bold attacks and even some wild sacrifices. At lower levels, white often manages to grab the pawn back and gets a nice position. But if black plays a flawless defense, they can turn things around, maybe even ending up with the better game. So it's high risk, high reward. Definitely not for the faint-hearted. Ready for a classic? The Italian game feels like that cozy pasta dish you can't go wrong with. It's solid, easy, and oh so reliable. The idea? Get your bishop to c4 early on, aiming straight at black's weak spot around their king. Plus you're all set to castle and get your king safely out of the way. It's all about a steady setup, controlling the center, moving your pieces to solid squares, and getting a decent position. Simple yet powerful, which is why beginners love it. It's like the go-to opening that makes you feel secure, but still packs a punch. The Modern Defense. The Modern Defense is kind of like saying, I'm not in a hurry. Black doesn't fight for the center right away. Instead, they develop the bishop to g7, keeping an eye on that long diagonal, bring out the knight, and get ready to castle. Black lets white take up some space and then plans a counterattack. It's perfect for players who like to stay chill and wait for their moment to strike. The English Opening. The English Opening feels like a twist on the classics. White goes for the c4 move, grabbing some central control without committing too much to the center. This one's super flexible. White can pivot to a Queen's Gambit setup or go for something unique like pushing the g3 pawn. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure book. You get options and they're all pretty decent. The Benko Gambit. The Benko is a mastermind's gambit. Black throws away a pawn, sometimes even two, on the queen side, creating long-term pressure that white has a hard time matching. This one is complex but powerful if you know what you're doing. It's the kind of move you save for when you're ready to flex some serious strategy skills. The Dutch Defense. Meet the Dutch Defense. While most defenses against d4 are in the Indian game or double queen's pawn club, the Dutch does its own thing. Black pushes to control the e4 square, but there's a catch. It leaves the king side a little exposed. Still, it's reliable, offering black straightforward moves and support in the center. It's a unique option for when you want to add a bit of personality to your game without taking too many risks. The Bonon Defense against the queen's pawn. Black goes for the Bonon Defense. It's like the Queen's Gambit's wild cousin, where capturing doesn't actually benefit white as much as you'd think. It creates a unique board position that's easy for black to play, even if it's not objectively the best choice. This one is fun if you want to keep white guessing. The Grob Attack. Alright, let's be real. The Grob is what you play when you want to have fun and confuse your opponent. White moves the g-pawn right out the gate, which usually just opens up white's king to attacks. It's often called the worst opening, but hey, sometimes it's fun to be a bit of a rebel. Think of it like ordering pineapple on pizza, divisive but entertaining. Bird's Opening. Imagine a Dutch defense, but from white's side, that's Bird's Opening. White goes for central control but risks a bit of kingside vulnerability. It's a move that might not be objectively the strongest, but it's great fun and catches opponents off guard. If you're in the mood for something offbeat but strategic, bird's opening is your ticket. The England Gambit. The England Gambit's a bit of a long shot against the queen's pawn. Black tries to shake things up with an open game, but it often just doesn't work. However, there is a fun trap white can fall into if they're not careful. Think of this gambit as the opening equivalent of a prank call. It's entertaining, but it might not get you very far if your opponent knows what they're doing. The French Defense. The French is one of the most popular defenses against e4. Black aims to counterattack in the center with a d-pawn push, but here's the tricky part. There's a pesky bishop known as the French bishop that often gets stuck and becomes weak. But if you can get around that drawback, the French defense is super solid and effective against the e4 pawn, making it a reliable choice at all levels. The Elephant Gambit. Time for something wacky. The Elephant Gambit is Black's attempt at a surprise attack by pushing for a quick strike against White. But spoiler alert, it's generally too soon and ends up backfiring. White can capture either of Black's pawns and walk away with an advantage. Still, it's a decent surprise weapon against unprepared players, so it's worth pulling out if you're feeling a bit daring. The King's Indian Defense. Now we're getting serious. The King's Indian Defense is one of Black's strongest responses to d4 and starts with a quick fianchetto of the bishop. Black builds up a long-term kingside attack while White tends to focus on the queen side. It's like a chess tug-of-war, each player battling it out on opposite sides of the board. This opening can lead to intense, game-long struggles that often come down to who breaks through first. Alekhines Defense. Finally, we've got Alekhines Defense, which is as unique as it gets. Black basically says, here White, take the center, and then waits to pick it apart later. Black's idea is that White might go a bit overboard, leaving weaknesses Black can exploit. It's a gutsy move, requiring Black to play tight and precise, but it's also a lot of fun if you're in the mood to throw off your opponent and take a more strategic approach. Latvian Gambit. Think of the Latvian Gambit as the Elephant Gambit's rebellious twin. This one's even more daring, and here's the kicker. Chess engines hate it. They say White gets a big advantage if they play smart. But in practice, Black does well, thanks to all the tricky traps hidden in this opening. It's a risky play, but for those who love the thrill of danger, the Latvian Gambit delivers. The Scotch Game. The Scotch is all about immediate central action. White dives right into a center clash, leading to either resolved tension or a huge, explosive battle. This opening is a crowd pleaser among king's pawn openings, with d4 as the main showdown spot. If you love getting into the action early, the Scotch won't disappoint. The Nimzo Indian Defense. With the Nimzo Indian, Black pins White's knight right away and gets ready to castle. Black's strategy often includes striking at the center with moves like d4 or c4 and adding more pressure on White's knight. This opening sets Black up for a good position and offers a well-balanced game with lots of options. Meet the Polish opening, one of the more unusual starts. It's kind of like the Grob, but better. The Polish gets away with pushing a pawn because it's easily defended. Plus, the bishop on b2 packs a punch and keeps White's king ready to castle safely. It's a good pick for anyone looking to throw in a bit of surprise without sacrificing strength. The Vienna Game. In the Vienna, White moves out a knight, which doesn't exactly threaten anything yet, but gives White some nice flexibility. It preemptively supports the e4 pawn and opens up fun f4 gambits, often leading to even stronger versions of the King's Gambit. Overall, it's a safe yet versatile opening, making it a great choice for those who like to keep options open. The Stafford Gambit is the gambit everyone seems to have strong opinions on. Chess engines insist Black is already in trouble here, but in practice, there are so many traps that Black often wins more than expected. The beauty of this gambit. Only advanced players tend to know the best response, so for beginners, the Stafford is like a chess cheat code. The Dragon Variation, Sicilian Defense. Finally, the Dragon. This Sicilian Defense variation is fiery and flexible. Black positions the bishop on g7 and keeps an eye on the center from afar, setting up for attacks when the time is right. It can lead to either calm, strategic games or intense battles, perfect for advanced players who love to adapt their playstyle. The Barnes Opening. The Barnes Opening is almost universally regarded as White's worst starting move. It damages the king's side and blocks the knight's best square. While it's not an immediate loss, it leaves White in a tight spot from the very start. Use it if you dare. The Nimzo-Larsen attack. The Nimzo-Larsen is a quirky but powerful approach. White aims to control the center with the dark-squared bishop. It's an effective tool for opening up brutal attacks and setting up beautiful combinations, often catching black off guard with its unique setups. The Indian game. A gateway to countless d4 defenses, black develops a knight instead of directly fighting for the center with pawns. This creates a slight imbalance, which can lead to a more dynamic game compared to the d5 responses. If you enjoyed our video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, but means a world to us.